is East Asia Tonight.
Good evening, I'm Jill Newbronner. Tonight's top stories. China says claims of any ongoing trade talks with the US are groundless after it lashed out at Washington and the UN for what it calls bullying and blackmail in its trade practices. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi vows to track down attackers as well as their backers a day after a deadly assault in Indian-controlled Kashmir. Pakistan, meanwhile, convenes a rare meeting to formulate a response to India. China sends a new team of astronauts to its space station as Beijing marches towards becoming a space power to rival the US and Russia. China remains Southeast Asia's most influential economic and political strategic power. This is according to a recent survey, and we'll be speaking with our correspondents on their China Power series covering Beijing's influence in the region. Also ahead, what do China's rapid urbanisation and loneliness have in common for a good number of its elderly? Our correspondent in Shanghai finds out. First, Beijing has urged Washington to lift all unilateral tariffs against China to resolve the trade issue between the two countries, but it has rejected claims of any ongoing talks as, quote, fake news.
据我了解，中美双方并没有就关税问题进行磋商或谈判，更谈不上达成协议。这场关税战是由美方发起的，中方的态度是一贯的、明确的，打奉陪到底，谈大门敞开，对话谈判 必须是平等、尊重、互惠的。
China's response comes amid growing speculation US President Donald Trump could cut tariffs on Chinese imports. The American leader said earlier this week that duties on goods from China will not be as high as the 145% his administration had imposed. The Wall Street Journal reported it could be slashed to about 50%. Other countries hit by these so-called reciprocal tariffs, including Japan, are seeking negotiations with the Trump administration before a 90-day reprieve is up. The close U.S. ally had been told it would not be given special treatment from the 24% levies imposed. Tokyo demanded a review on its automobile and steel exports to America during ministerial-level talks earlier this month. Reports say Japan's economy minister Ryosei Akazawa intends to demand a further review when both sides meet again. He's expected to head to the U.S. for more talks as early as next week. Now, a South Korean delegation is set to meet U.S. officials today for the first round of talks aimed at lowering tariffs. Discussions are expected to focus on cooperating in shipbuilding, energy, and defense costs. Seoul says the meeting was arranged at the request of Washington, which follows a call held between South Korean acting President Han Duck-soo and U.S. President Trump earlier this month. The U.S. has imposed 25% of reciprocal tariffs against South Korea, and that's currently on hold till early July. That's on top of the 10% blanket tariffs and another 25% duties on auto and steel. Mr. Trump has singled out South Korea for its trade surpluses with the U.S., which hit a record high of $55.6 billion last year. Well, Taiwan is planning to add another $10 billion to a special budget to cushion the economic impact of U.S. tariffs on the island. And that brings the total package to more than $12.6 billion. That's more than 4 times the original amount. The money will go towards financing assistance for companies, as well as measures to stabilize the job market and electricity subsidies. But it will need the approval from Taiwan's parliament. Opposition parties currently hold a majority and have imposed sweeping cuts on this year's main budget, citing wasteful spending. Taiwan had been set to face 32% duties from the U.S., before President Donald Trump pushed his so-called reciprocal tariffs for 90 days. Taipei has already started talks with Washington and pledged billions in new purchases to reduce the island's trade gap with America. Taiwanese President William Lai said increasing purchases of U.S. natural gas and oil is a focus of discussions. The island has also indicated it is willing to buy more U.S. weapons. Well, let's look beyond East Asia. An escalation of tense relations between India and Pakistan after a deadly attack on tourists in the Indian-administered side of the disputed Kashmir region. And both nations organizing high-level meetings separately. Political parties in India were convened, while Pakistan's Prime Minister is leading a rare talk with the National Security Committee. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi has pledged to punish the attackers beyond their imagination, even if it takes pursuing them to the ends of the earth. Earlier today, India introduced a raft of measures in an apparent blaming of Pakistan, even though it has denied any role in the attack. This includes the suspension of the 6 decades-old Indus Waters Treaty, which Islamabad is heavily dependent on for water supply. Delhi also closing the mainland border crossing between both countries and cancelled special South Asian visas that allow Pakistanis to travel to India. The country is also recalling its defense advisors from its embassy in Islamabad. Now, Tuesday's attack took place at the popular tourist site of Pahalgam. 26 people were killed, all Indian nationals except for one who was from Nepal. A militant group, Kashmir Resistance, has claimed responsibility, voicing discontent over what it said were 85,000 outsiders settling in the region. India believes it's a front for Pakistan-based militant networks such as Lashkar-e-Taiba and Hizbul Mujahideen. Well, let's get more now from Ishan Garg, who is standing by in New Delhi. Now, Mr. Modi, Ishan, has vowed to destroy, and this is a direct quote, the remainder of the land that belongs to terrorists. What does this signal in terms of India-Pakistan ties?
Well, Jill, this line might turn out to be the most important sentence uttered by Prime Minister Narendra Modi on Thursday, because many in India are seeing this sentence as a mark that India is going to launch some sort of military strike. It could be a targeted attack against encampments of these militias of individuals that India has designated as terrorists, the groups that India has designated as terrorists. This could be within what India calls the Pakistan-occupied Kashmir, which is essentially the part of Kashmir that is currently controlled by Pakistan. And the overall language that Prime Minister Narendra Modi used in his speech was one of fury and one of promising vengeance for the attack that has been perpetrated in Kashmir. And now there are 3 particular takeaways, I think, from Prime Minister Modi's speech, which very rarely was in English language, almost as if to not only give a message to his own countrymen, but also to give a message out to the whole world. The 3 key takeaways are that Indian opposition parties, as well as the ruling party, they are all in agreement that some sort of measures need to be taken after this attack. The second is that India is going to respond even after implementing this raft of measures, which includes downgrading diplomatic ties with Pakistan. And the third, of course, is that it is going to escalate tensions to a certain degree within Asia. That's what experts here are saying. And it remains to be seen what else the Indian government might do in the next few days.
All right, many thanks, Ishan Garg in New Delhi. Now, let's go to Islamabad next to find out how they're handling the situation and the growing unrest. For that, Hira Mustafa is joining us live from there. Now, Hira, India has repeatedly accused Pakistan of masterminding the attack. How are authorities planning to respond to the slew of measures?
Well, the situation in the capital remains very tense, and why I'm saying that we have seen some strong reactions throughout the day coming from different political parties, including former Prime Minister Imran Khan's party, denouncing the accusations leveled by India against Pakistan with regards to the terror attack that happened in Indian-administered Kashmir. In response of this escalating situation, a top security level meeting is currently underway with Prime Minister, Chief of Army Staff, Interior Minister, Foreign Minister and other military officials are present to draft a policy in response to the raft of measures that India has imposed against Pakistan. And this experts believe that in regards to this escalating situation, what could be the outcome is that Pakistan might put a ban on its airspace of the might put a ban on its airspace, not letting commercial Indian airlines passing through its airspace. The measure that was being taken by Pakistani government in 2019 when an attack happened in Indian-administered Kashmir, that could be a possibility that which
All right, we've just lost Hira there, but we got the gist of the Pakistani response from Islamabad there. Now, if you do want more coverage on this developing story across CNA platforms, including our website, cna.asia, you can also go to our mobile app. Well, China has launched its Shenzhou 20 less than an hour ago from the Jiuquan Satellite Launch Center in the country's northwest. Now, the mission is the next step in a tense space race between Beijing and Washington to create bases on the moon. Now, the spaceship launched at 5:17 p.m. local time will take around 7 hours to reach the space station. This marks the 35th mission of China's manned space program and the 5th crewed mission during the application and development stage of China's space station. Now, key objectives include conducting an in-orbit rotation with the previous Shenzhou 19 crew. The astronauts will remain on board the space station for around 6 months, focusing on space science experiments, application tests, extravehicular activities, and cargo handling. Well, let's get more on China's space endeavors. Tan Yuguan joins us from Shanghai. Yuguan, we talked a bit about the crew's activities. So tell us more about the mission and what this reflects on the progress of China in this area.
Well, earlier, as you mentioned, Shenzhou 14 and 15 were basically focused on constructing the Tiangong space station modules. And so now they have progressed towards in the words of the China manned space agency, the application and development phase. So Shenzhou 20 is essentially the 5th mission in that phase. That phase will prioritize scientific use over hardware integration. And unlike earlier assembly-focused flights, this mission will emphasize space medicine, technology, experiments, and activities outside of the space station. And last but not least, also maintenance and upgrades. It goes to show how smoothly things have gone with this Tiangong program. Experiments and activities, all of it will further China's knowledge and skills in the space and further its ambitions to place astronauts on the moon by 2030. Now, if you notice, there were 2 newbies on this particular mission. It shows you that China is also trying to expand its team of astronauts. Jill?
Now, it's always characterized as a race, isn't it? China and the US and Russia. So how does this mission fit into China's space industry ambitions as a whole?
Well, China's 2021 white paper made it quite clear. It wants to be a top-tier space power essentially by 2030, about 5 years from now. It wants to land a man on the moon by roughly that time and set up a lunar station roughly by 2035. Beyond that, it hopes to bring samples back from Mars. So today's launch and launches in the future will lay the groundwork for all of that. In fact, today is a space day in China, And at the opening ceremony, the China National Space Administration says it is planning to launch the Chang'e 8 lunar module in 2029. That announcement was made at the opening ceremony. The Chang'e 8 will target a plateau near the lunar south pole of the moon. Now, it will carry payloads, interestingly, from 11 countries and regions and one international organization. They include robots designed in Hong Kong, an exploration rover made by Turkey, as well as other devices from Italy, Russia, Thailand, Bahrain, Egypt, and Iran. In a way, showing off China's leadership in the realm of international space exploration. Now, aside from space exploration, China is also looking to develop a full-blown space industry, spanning launch services, satellite manufacturing, space applications, and even lunar infrastructure. In fact, here in Shanghai, the city just announced last week that it plans to expand its commercial space industry to over 1 billion yuan. Well, 1 billion yuan is a rounding error in Shanghai's 5 trillion yuan economy, but for emerging sector to make up about 2% of GDP is still quite remarkable. So in that plan, Shanghai aims to produce about 100 commercial rockets, 1,000 satellites annually. It also plans to position itself as a hub for reusable rockets, low-cost satellite manufacturing, as well as space applications. Jill?
Wow. Well, happy Space Day, Yu Guan. Thanks so much. Tan Yu Guan, live there from Shanghai. Coming up on East Asia tonight, South Korea's economy contracts in Q1, boosting the case for the Bank of Korea to cut rates. Plus, President Trump says he will set duties on Chinese imports over the next 2 to 3 weeks, but they won't be near the 145% his administration had imposed. Welcome back, everyone, as we check out the business news with Roland Lim. And Roland, you got to walk us through a quagmire of mixed messages here, because on one hand, you have Washington, who's willing to lower tariffs against China, but on the other hand, you've got Beijing saying, hey, there's no progress between US-China trade talks. How is this all affecting markets?
Well, there's a lot of guesswork involved to gauge President Trump's intentions, and that's keeping investors bewildered over how the damaging trade war will evolve. Greater China markets moved cautiously today amid shaky optimism on softening trade tensions with the US. Benchmark mainland indices giving up earlier gains, with tech shares among the main laggards. Shanghai Composite Index seesawing between gains and losses before closing roughly flat, while Shenzhou ended the day 0.5% in the red. Hong Kong's benchmark Hang Seng Index dropped nearly 1%, led by tech shares. Among them, JD.com shares leading the decline, continuing the weakness we saw yesterday as China's competition in the delivery platform space heats up. South Korea's economy contracted in the first quarter as the Asian export giant reels from months of political chaos and heightened trade tensions. GDP shrunk 0.1% on year in the first 3 months of this year, down sharply from the 1.2% growth in the same quarter last year. It also missed analysts' expectations. Quarter on quarter, the economy fell 0.2%, also below expectations. Construction investment declined for the fourth straight quarter, that is, and both private consumption and government spending fell as well. The data highlights the fragile state of activity in the export-oriented economy. According to the Korea Customs Service, as of mid-April, the country's exports had dropped by more than 5% compared to the previous year. Now, it logged declines in 9 out of the country's 10 major export categories, excluding semiconductors. The latest GDP print adding to the challenges facing policymakers to sustain growth. The central bank has kept its key interest rate unchanged at 2.75% last week to support the currency. It also signaled likely rate cuts in the coming quarters to support slowing growth. South Korean acting President Han Duck-soo says his government will do its best to find a win-win situation in trade talks with the U.S. today. He made the remarks at the National Assembly, where he also urged lawmakers to quickly approve an extra budget amid global trade uncertainties. South Korea, which faces 25% U.S. reciprocal tariffs, is among the first countries the Trump administration has initiated trade talks with. CNA's Lim Yon-suk has more.
South Korean acting President Han Duck-soo was at the National Assembly on Thursday morning to deliver a speech on state affairs and seek cooperation in passing an extra budget of 12.2 trillion won, about $8.5 billion US. In his speech, he also said the government hopes to find a win-win solution during trade talks with the U.S., with the South Korean delegation currently in Washington.
정부는 국익이 최우선이라는 원칙 하에 무역 균형, 조선, LNG 3대 분야를 중심으로 양국이 상호 윈윈 할 수 있는 합의점을 모색하기 위해 총력을 다할 것입니다.
Han Duck-soo told lawmakers that Parliament needed to approve the extra budget as quickly as possible to counter risks to the country's economic growth. He said the budget would be used for purposes like building homes for the victims of the March wildfires and promoting special urban regeneration projects for completely destroyed villages, as well as to prevent a liquidity crunch among export businesses affected by the U.S. tariffs.
이번 추가 경정 예산안이 국민께 든든한 힘이 되어드리고 우리 경제의 회복과 도약의 소중한 마중물이 될 수 있도록 정부가 제출한 추가 경정 예산안을 조속히 심의 의결해 주실 것을 간곡히 부탁드립니다.
Reaction from the floor was mixed. There was applause from the ruling party side, but several lawmakers from the opposition walked out of the main hall even before Mr. Han ended his speech. The opposition-controlled parliament last year slashed the government's budget proposal for this year. It was the first time Parliament did so without consent from government ministries or between rival parties. Impeached President Yoon Suk-yeol has cited the budget cuts as one of the reasons for his martial law declaration, as it would paralyze basic government functions. Lim Yon-suk, CNA, Seoul.
Washington tariffs are posing a threat to the livelihoods of fishing towns in southern China. Known for their thriving supply of the freshwater fish tilapia, residents in Maoming City are pinning their hopes on a trade deal.
In the southern Chinese city of Maoming, tilapia is a way of life for thousands of people. The scale of tilapia production here is staggering. An area roughly 1.5 times the size of San Francisco is dedicated to farming the humble fish. Fish nurseries and feedlots keep the farm supplied, and 16 factories in turn turn tilapia into fillets for export, much of it to the United States. However, in late April, that ecosystem was at a near standstill because of the trade war. Round after round of tariffs mean China's $425 million in tilapia exports to the United States face duties of 170%. That has all but priced them out of their largest export market. Zhu is a veteran fish buyer for several processing plants, which previously sold 60% of their tilapia to the U.S.
那肯定有影响啊！他们都说这样搞下去，全部都破产了。
While markets exist elsewhere, they can't quickly or fully replace U.S. demand. People in the industry say the local market isn't a viable alternative either. Consumers are cautious and spending is low. On the outskirts of the city, workers wade through shallow ponds, scooping up newly hatched tilapia fry. The tiny fish are usually in high demand this time of year as farmers restock their ponds. But fish farmer Bi Fuxiang says orders are scarce this spring. Tilapia prices are still down 7% since the trade war and are dangerously low. That's according to traders like Huang Songfei. He's worked with tilapia since he was a kid, but now he's wondering if he should jump ship before it's too late.
在那个养殖区那里讨论来养，加到这个税了，不知道养还是不养，都是难的，是吧？如果再按照那个价格再低收的话，养殖户也要亏本，所以进退两难啊。
And you're up to date with the business news.
We are indeed. Thank you so much, Roland. Now, coming up on East Asia tonight, China's influence in Southeast Asia is not just about the muscle, but also the presence and persuasion. We speak with our correspondents who have reported from the region to see how Beijing's influence is being felt. This is East Asia Tonight, and here are the headlines we're following. China refutes claims that there are ongoing trade talks with the US, calling it groundless. It earlier lashed out at Washington at the United Nations for what it calls bullying and blackmail in its trade practices. Indian Prime Minister Modi vows to track down attackers as well as their backers, a day after a deadly assault in Indian-controlled Kashmir killed 26 people. Pakistan, meanwhile, convenes a rare meeting to weigh its responses to India. And China sends a new team of astronauts to its space station, its 15th crewed spaceflight for its 3 decades-old Shenzhou program. From high-speed rail to soft power plays, China's influence in Southeast Asia is shifting. It's not just about muscle anymore, it's also about presence, perception, and persuasion. With US-China tensions rising, the region is feeling the pressure and recalibrating its priorities. According to a 2025 survey by the IC's Yusof Ishak Institute, China remains Southeast Asia's most influential economic and political strategic power, ahead of the US by a significant margin. But that dominance comes with mixed feelings. Nearly 7 in 10 who see China as the top political strategic power say they're worried about its growing reach. Our CNA correspondents hit the ground across Southeast Asia to see how Beijing's influence is being felt and how locals are responding. And for that, we've got 2 of our reporters, Digi correspondents, Amir Yusuf in Johor Bahru and Kiki Siraga, who is in Jakarta. They both join us now. But Amir, to you first. You've been looking into the topic of China's Belt and Road initiatives and its growing influence by funding all these infrastructure projects across Southeast Asia. How's the impact being felt?
Thanks, Jill. So there are 2 very polarized views on this issue. On the one hand, countries like Laos and Indonesia, we have seen how Belt and Road projects have improved the life of locals and helped to boost the economy. Cases in point are the Laos-China Railway, which runs from Vientiane to Kunming, as well as the Jakarta-Bandung high-speed rail. Now, these railways, which run on Chinese technology, give rural folks better accessibility and jobs. My colleague Kiki also spoke to locals in Jakarta, and naturally, people there are appreciative of China's contributions. Now, on the other hand, in the Philippines and even in Malaysia, we have seen BRI projects being abandoned or stalled or delayed. I visited the Malacca Gateway project, which has been downscaled from a 40 billion ringgit commercial and tourism development to a 600 million ringgit cruise center. Now, some locals complain about how this concept has become a white elephant, abandoned construction sites, reclaimed land that has been impacted the seafood catch of fishermen. So in this case, they don't perceive China's growing influence in a good light.
Now, talk to us a bit more about the Philippines in particular, because that's a really interesting case study because Manila and Beijing relations have been tense, particularly when it comes to issues in the South China Sea.
Yes, the Philippines is an extreme case, in which almost all or 95% of the Belt and Road initiatives being planned for are now cancelled. And people on the ground have been left frustrated with this reality. I visited Tagum City in the south, where the Mindanao Railway was slated to be constructed, but the plans have now been abandoned. So we spoke to rural villagers, and some of them related about how they were promised money for their land. Others were set to be rehomed to more modern neighborhoods, but all these plans are now in limbo. China's funding has stalled due to strained ties between Beijing and Manila. And I spoke to a former Philippine Supreme Court justice who expressed frustration with how he felt the government under then President Rodrigo Duterte was too lenient with China. And this is what he had to say.
Well, I don't think China really intended to give us the loans, because even during the time of President Duterte, they never gave us the loans. I mean, they dangled all of these loans to Duterte, $24 billion, in exchange for Duterte being very soft on China on the South China Sea, but nothing, less than 5% of their promises materialized. I mean, they took President Duterte for a ride.
So many Filipinos have this view, but analysts say that China's motivation for these infrastructural projects is mostly commercial, so that its private and government-linked firms can earn profits.
Okay, Amir, thanks for that. Well, I want to bring in Kiki next. And Kiki, you went to Timor-Leste as well as Morowali, that's in Indonesia, to see how China's infrastructure projects have helped develop these two countries. What are you seeing on the ground there?
Yes, so I went to Timor-Leste, Asia's youngest country, which became independent from Indonesia in 2002. And China was one of the first countries to recognize Timor-Leste's independence and gave support so Timor-Leste could develop the country. I was in Timor-Leste's capital, Dili, and also in Likisa on the outskirts of Dili. And I saw some of the infrastructure that was built with China's help, such as its presidential palace and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs building in Dili. I also went to a dump site in Likisa, which was still under construction by a Chinese company called China Harbor Engineering Company. Now, some people welcome the Chinese presence there as it creates job opportunities and helps develop the country. But some feel it has become increasingly dominant in recent years as many Chinese people have set up businesses in Timor-Leste, and the locals cannot compete with them because they are less experienced and have less capital. I had the chance to interview Timor-Leste's Prime Minister, Sanana Gusmao, and I asked him how local businesses can compete with Chinese merchants. And this is what he has to say.
We have to push, improve the culture of business, because the problem also is that we are importing everything, and in the economic field we have to change this. We have to start producing. I don't say that we are dependent on China. It will depend on now we are dependent on the import from Asian countries.
Now, Kiki, you...
So Timor-Leste...
Carry on.
So to wrap it up, Timor-Leste has many import partners. Among them is China, but Indonesia actually tops the list. And Timor-Leste now wants to help its people so it becomes less dependent and reliant on imports, Jill.
Okay, I want to take you now to Indonesia, where you're based. And when you talk to people on the ground, what are they saying? Have their perceptions changed at all with all this wave of Chinese investments coming in recent years?
Well, Indonesia is also no stranger to Chinese infrastructure, and Amir briefly mentioned about the Jakarta-Bandung high-speed train, which was launched here about 1.5 years ago. It was the first Belt and Road Initiative project completed in Indonesia, but there are also other Chinese-backed projects in Indonesia. I went to Morowali, that's a regency in central Sulawesi province, and there is IMIP, a huge industrial park focusing on the production of stainless steel and nickel. It is 6,000 hectares, very large. It has about 94,000 workers. 10% of them are actually Chinese workers because IMIP has many Chinese tenants. It has about 56 tenants in total. So the Indonesian government said since IMIP's establishment in 2015, Morowali has been bustling because it used to be a sleepy regency. And the government is very happy about this. I spoke to a few people on the ground who said, yes, they are happy about IMIP's presence there because it has created job opportunities. But then there are also locals who say they're not so happy because it creates pollution. The water, I must say, Imip faces the Banda Sea, which is known for its clean water, but since Imip's presence, local fishermen say they have problems getting a catch, and a lot of people are saying Morawali is now very dusty, a lot of people get sick, and some workers also said to me that they're happy to work at Imip or in Morawali, but they are concerned about the safety measures at their workplace.
Yeah. Okay, now a quick question to both of you. Now that you have seen what people are saying on the ground and the situation today, how do you foresee China's economic and infrastructure influence in Southeast Asia going forward? Amir, you first.
Well, Jill, in the infrastructural sense, I think that China is pivoting slightly. Analysts I spoke to said that they are moving away from funding huge mega projects like railway lines to smaller projects like schools and hospitals. But the overall strategy of helping to fund projects is not dead in the water. Just in February, plans were announced for a Vietnam-China railway. So it will be interesting to see if China presses on with funding more bridges, railways, or highways in Southeast Asia or not, especially amid this tense trade war with the US.
Yeah, indeed. What about you, Kiki?
Well, analysts told me China's presence in Indonesia and Timor-Leste will only continue to grow. So the governments in both countries need to play a more active role so locals don't feel left out. Timor-Leste's government could, for example, provide local businesses with better access to finance and land ownership. Well, in general, there should be more social interactions between Chinese workers and locals so they understand each other, Jill.
All right, great to have both our digital colleagues on board. CNA digital correspondents Amar Yusuf in Johor Bahru, Kiki Siriga in Jakarta. Thank you. We'll be hearing from our correspondents' coverage of China's influence in Southeast Asia on Friday. Meanwhile, for more related stories, do head over to our website, cna.asia, and our mobile app. Coming up on East Asia tonight, see what some Chinese seniors are up to in Shanghai as urbanisation over the years prompts more to look for new ways to combat loneliness. An election campaigning underway in Singapore after political parties revealed their lineups. Welcome back as we bring you some breaking news. And one of our earlier stories that we told you about the situation between India and Pakistan over an attack of tourists. Now, India has ordered all Pakistani citizens to leave the country by April the 29th. India says all existing visas issued to Pakistanis stand revoked and visa services to Pakistanis have been suspended. Pakistan, on the other hand, has closed all airspace to India-owned or operated airlines. All this is in the wake of the terror attacks in India-controlled Kashmir yesterday. Now, this is a developing story. We'll bring you news as it comes to us. Another news with one of the fastest growing populations in the world, China is bracing for a future where nearly 1 in 3 people will be over the age of 60 within 15 years. But in cities like Shanghai, that future is already here. Seniors make up a significant share of the population, and as urbanization reshapes traditional family dynamics, many of them are looking for new ways to connect and combat loneliness. CNA's Tan Yu-Guang reports.
It's Tuesday afternoon at an IKEA outlet in Shanghai. It's a work day, yet the bistro is unusually busy. This has become a dating hotspot for seniors. It's been so every Tuesday for nearly 2 decades. It started when the furniture retailer first offered free coffee for IKEA members. Since seniors were the only ones free to take up this offer during office hours, the restaurant in this IKEA outlet behind me slowly became a popular place for seniors to gather. It wasn't long before Tuesdays and Thursdays became the unofficial Seniors' Day. But in a city of 25 million people like Shanghai, it takes more than just a bistro at the IKEA outlet to satisfy the needs of seniors seeking companionship. This is People's Park in central Shanghai on a Saturday afternoon. Just like at IKEA, the seniors are here to mingle.
我今天我抽出时间我到这边看一看，就小找另一半。
Loneliness among seniors isn't new, nor is it limited to China. According to the World Health Organization, up to 1 in 3 older people are lonely in some countries surveyed. But China's rapid urbanization in recent decades presents unique challenges.
中国从这个1978年到现在，实际上是城镇化率由原来的16%变成了66%了。就是说，有一半的这个农村人进到了城里，然后你就会发现他们的观念、行为方式受到了巨大的冲击。然后随着生命的这种不断的延长，然后他们不断在更换自己的思考问题的方式，包括对这种亲密关系和情感关系的看法。但是呢，可能农村人进到城市里边遇到一个很大的问题，就是缺少公共平台和空间。
把你绊倒。
Wang Ai, as she likes to be known, is originally from the Dongbei region, or northeastern region of China. The Shanghai resident is a widow and a regular at the park.
我过去小的时候在东北，我们那当地都是一直独唱的。现在喉咙坏了嘛，但是也喜欢唱歌啊，我就一直喜欢放着音乐唱歌。这就是快乐，在家里面不能唱歌啊。 就是消磨时间，因为我是外地的，上海人一般都要找上海人，不愿意找外地人的。
China has tens of millions of so-called 老漂族, or elderly migrants, who move to the cities to live with their children and help look after their grandchildren. Mental health issues among this group have caused concern in recent years.
中国有将近80%到85%的城里的年轻人生完孩子之后是祖辈帮着抚养的，就老人从外地过来进入到城市里面去抚养。那么这件事情呢，可能对帮助年轻人是有好处的，但是我们发现对老年人的心理健康实际上是没有好处的。我们本来以为说，哎，你看你不又可以跟你的儿孙满堂，对吧，在一起照顾小孙子也蛮好的，但是其实不是，因为这些老人进入到这个城市里面来以后啊，他有那种寄居的感觉。
For many of the elderly, their senior years come after China's decades of rapid development that have brought about huge shifts in attitudes towards dating, love, and marriage, leading to new romantic aspirations.
1949年新中国成立的时候，中国人的平均寿命只有35岁，所以这样的情况就不可能出现啊。现在随着人的这个寿命的不断的延长，最主要的是社会的更迭，然后导致这些老年人进入城市之后，他的脑袋也在不断的在看这个连续剧啊，在跟邻居聊天的过程中，也在不断的更新观念。
Statistics show over a third of Shanghai's residents are aged 60 and above. And a large body of research finds that loneliness can have a serious impact on older people's longevity and well-being. Which is why Dr. He hopes that venues like IKEA will continue to welcome gatherings like these. After all, who knows? Some of these seniors might just couple up and find themselves in need of new furniture for their love nest.
Well, for more on the challenges posed by an aging population in Asia, do go to our website, CNA correspondent episode, Living Longer, Blessing or Curse, and that's on CNA's Insider YouTube channel. Election campaigning underway in Singapore after political parties revealed their lineups. Shaida Othman is here to tell us more.
Thanks, Jill. Fresh from a surprise walkover win, MP-elect Seah Kian Peng says his Marine Parade Brettle Heights team has hit the ground running to engage residents. Now, in the meantime, some residents are already mulling travel plans now that they no longer have to vote. Ali Vamsha reports.
When Miss Loretta Pereira found out about the unexpected walkover in her home constituency of Marine Parade Brettle Heights, disappointment washed over her. The Luxembourg-based Singaporean had forked out more than $100 for a quick hop to London, one of 10 overseas polling stations for the general election.
I was excited about this for a really long time. I've always been very politically involved and outspoken, whether I've lived back home in Singapore or whether I've lived overseas. So to me, it's a really important thing to be able to vote. And I'm still sort of recovering from this feeling of not being able to vote.
For now, she says she will spend her time in the UK meeting friends. And now that they no longer have to cast their ballots on polling day next Saturday, some residents of the constituency are already making alternative plans for the weekend.
I was thinking of going to South Korea because there was a concert I actually initially wanted to attend over the weekend there, but I hadn't booked it because of the elections. But now that I don't have to vote, I can go for my concert.
I do have friends who are staying in Marine Parade Brettle, and I think they would probably be having plans to be heading over to JB just to spend the long weekend there.
Fresh from the surprise walkover win from nomination day proceedings, the Marine Parade Brettle Heights PAP team has wasted no time to hit the ground running. In fact, they're already engaging residents, such as at this local coffee shop.
It's also looking to share more about key priorities for the next 5 years, such as greater inclusiveness and strengthening intergenerational ties. They'll also be kept busy over the next couple of days.
While we will spend time at our own local divisions, we will also be going out to help our other colleagues and help them. Some of us may be speaking at rallies, some of us will be going out to attend the rallies, some of us will be going out to help campaign.
Mr. Sia also says that as he steps into his role as the team's leader, he'll focus on building teamwork so that they can come up with the best ideas for serving the residents.
Well, the Workers' Party chief Pritam Singh has rebutted criticism from fellow opposition parties for his decision not to contest Marine Parade Brettle Heights GRC. WP had been expected to field a team for the constituency but did not file their papers on nomination day. Mr. Singh said there was no issue with his strategy and had explained WP's position to residents. Clara Lee with more.
Campaigning is in full swing at Sengkang GRC, where the Workers' Party is seeking re-election. Party chief Pritam Singh joined his Sengkang team in engaging residents and later defended his strategy after WP's no-show for Marine Parade Brettle Heights GRC on nomination day. The turn of events saw PAP re-elected via a walkover. Fellow opposition parties were quick to voice their displeasure at WP. The People's Power Party described WP as irresponsible and said they would have contested if WP had not kept their plans a secret.
It's not as if some of these opposition parties, and full respect to them because they have the right to contest elections, they don't approach us when they say, can I stand here, can I stand there? So I think we respect them, we respect their agency, and they make decisions in their enlightened self-interest, so do we.
Mr. Singh denied that there was any miscalculation on WP's part.
You could tell that even the PAP didn't confirm its slate way until the end. So certainly we were quite clear what we wanted to do. The question was, of course, to manage our own candidates in the way that we wanted to. And there was actually nothing untoward about our planning.
The opposition parties were not the only ones disappointed with what happened on nomination day.
To some Marine Parade residents who I met, I acknowledged and validated their disappointment that we were not standing there. But after I explained it to them, after I shared with them the reality of boundaries being redrawn, the reality of our own calculations as a party as to what is a better strategy, I think they understood where I was coming from.
Amid the drama on nomination day, WP's lineup for Sengkang was largely unchanged. New face Abdul Muhaimin joins the fold, replacing Raisa Khan, who resigned as MP in 2021 for lying in Parliament.
I feel that the resident of Sengkang will not dwell too much on the past, so I hope that I can bring something to the team and also to work for Singapore and work for Sengkang.
The incumbent Workers' Party team in Sengkang GRC will face a People's Action Party team made up of mostly new faces that's led by Dr. Lam Pin Min. This GRC is over 120,000 voters, and its electoral boundaries remain unchanged from the last election.
And meanwhile, at Punggol, the People's Action Party team, led by Deputy Prime Minister Gan Kim Yong, crossed paths with its Workers' Party opponents, led by Harpreet Singh. Both sides shared a prime spot at the bus interchange, handing out party flyers as the crowd streamed out early in the morning. The GRC has emerged as a key battleground after a series of surprise moves on nomination day. And that's the latest on the upcoming general election campaign in Singapore. Jill, in the lead up to the 3rd of May, my colleagues and I will be with you every day with the latest highlights of the day.
Yep, you'll be with us on the show. Glad to have you. Well, from Shah and myself, thank you so much for joining us for East Asia tonight. Don't forget, though, headlines anytime at cna.asia. Plus, we're on Facebook and YouTube. Bye-bye.